most of us think of A Christmas Carol as that cozy, heartwarming holiday story. But what if it's actually something much more? What if it's a warning hiding in plain sight? Today, we're going to dig into the hidden spiritual messages in some of our most familiar tales.
I mean, it's the ultimate redemption story, right? A total holiday classic. But what if Charles Dickens wasn't just, writing a nice piece of fiction? What if he was tapping into a much deeper spiritual reality about what happens after we die?
The source we're exploring today makes this incredible argument that some stories aren't just for entertainment. No, they're actually warnings, kind of like maps of the afterlife, designed to show us the consequences of the path we're walking right now in this life.
So, first, let's go back and re-examine that story we all think we know so well, but this time, let's look at it through the lens of a spiritual warning.
The first and honestly the most chilling warning in the whole story doesn't even come from one of the three famous spirits. It comes from Scrooge's old business partner, Jacob Marley. Marley shows up on Christmas Eve, and he is not some friendly ghost. He's this terrifying, tormented spirit, and he's there to explain exactly why he's suffering so much and why Scrooge is heading down the exact same path. And here's the thing, Marley's punishment isn't random. It's completely self-inflicted. He explains that his heavy chains are made from the very things he cared about in life: cash boxes, keys, ledgers. He is literally bound by his own greed. So when Scrooge tries to comfort him, saying, "But you were always a good man of business," Marley's ghost just cries out with this incredible realization. His real business should have been humanity. Everything else, all the dealings of his trade, were completely meaningless in comparison. Marley's fate is a direct mirror of his life. He's doomed to see all the good he could have done, all the charity he ignored, all the suffering he could have helped, but now he's totally powerless to do anything about it. This is the exact fate he is so desperately trying to save Scrooge from.
Okay, now, what if Marley's warning wasn't just fiction? About a century later, a book was published that claims to be a real spirit's account of the afterlife. And the parallels to Marley's fate are, well, they're just striking.
This account comes from a book called Na Solar, and it was dictated by a spirit named Andre Louise. Now, Louise was a doctor on Earth who, a lot like Scrooge, was pretty skeptical about all this stuff. His story picks up right after he dies, and it is anything but peaceful. He doesn't wake up in heaven. Instead, he finds himself in what he calls the lower regions, a bleak, terrifying place filled with other suffering souls. And he pretty quickly realizes this place is a direct reflection of the selfish life he led on Earth. His own words just paint this chilling picture. For him, this isn't some metaphor. It's his new, lived reality. He's tormented, lost, and terrified. And the anguish isn't coming from some outside punishment. It's the internal torment of his own conscience, finally laid bare. And in this terrible state, he's forced to confront the truth of his life. And just notice how similar his regrets are to Marley's. He realizes he was completely consumed by selfishness, ignoring his duty to other people, and only focusing on his own comfort. He basically says he failed to repay his enormous debt for the gift of life. So let's bring these two accounts together for a second. We have a famous piece of fiction from 1843 and a spiritual dictation from 1944. They're separated by a century and completely different contexts, but they deliver a message that is nearly identical. Just look at this comparison. On one side, you have Marley, bound by physical chains of greed. On the other, Andre Louise is trapped in a psychological prison of horror created by his own selfishness. Marley's agony is seeing the good he can't do anymore. Louise's is regretting that he ignored his duties to the human family. Both of them realize, far too late, that their true purpose was something so much bigger than their own little world. This amazing parallel, separated by a whole century, probably isn't just a literary coincidence. It points to a universal spiritual law that both of these stories perfectly illustrate. This is the core takeaway, really. The law of sowing and reaping. It's the idea that what we do, what we think, and what we prioritize in this life doesn't just poof, vanish at death. Instead, it forms the very substance of our reality in the next one. We are, in a very real sense, building our own afterlife moment by moment. Andre Louise puts it this way, and it's a direct plea to us, the living.
It's a powerful call to action, right? To do the work of becoming better people, of being more aware, now, before we're forced to face the consequences completely unprepared in the darkness. So, ultimately, the lesson from both Dickens's fiction and Louise's testimony is really the same. Death is not an escape hatch or a reset button. It's a continuation, where the spiritual chains we forged in life, or the inner light we cultivated, become our new, inescapable reality.
And that leaves us with a final, really thought-provoking question. If these stories are warnings, what about the stories we read and watch, and even the ones we tell ourselves? What profound truths might be hiding in there, just waiting for us to see them not just as entertainment, but maybe as a guide?